Owen should walk into Gaza and say, I am a gay man. See how you're treated.
I support the Palestinian people, and I support their right to exist.
Who want to kill you. They want to kill you.
All right, so this is going to be a reaction video with on Piers Morgan Uncensored with writer, commentator, podcast host Josh Hammer, pro-Israel, versus Owen Jones, who is also, he does journalism, anti-Israel. Let's get into it. So without further ado, make sure to follow me at Rafi the Realtor for all of your Instagram, for all of your real estate needs. You can support the channel via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the pinned comment or description. Let's get into it.
President Trump announced his Gaza deal with massive fanfare. The Board of Peace reached a historic agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas, he said. Israeli forces will withdraw. This weekend, however, Israel rejected that plan out of hand. Netanyahu's comments were the first public confirmation of what increasingly felt inevitable. Almost a year on from the so-called ceasefire, the IDF is still carrying out deadly strikes, including 2 not long after Trump's statement, and it currently controls more of the Strip than it did during the actual war. About 70% of the surviving population either can't get back to their homes or have no home to go to. And Israel's failure to allow in bulldozers and excavators means that the full death toll remains unknown, and Trump's big plans for redevelopment are currently an impossible fantasy. Well, many of the upstart Democrats in a key US election year have made Gaza and Israel a central part of their appeal to liberal voters. So far, Republicans have dealt with rising stars like Zohran Mamdani and Abdul El-Sayed by invoking 9/11 and Sharia law. But every opinion poll shows that voters on both sides are turning against Israel. Almost half of the country said Netanyahu should be arrested for war crimes on arrival in the US. And according to Pew Research, the Iran war has taken Trump's approval rating to the lowest for any president before the midterms since 1953. Well, candidates for president used to compete over who loved Israel the most and who would be toughest on many problems. Here, do you feel vindicated by the turn in global public opinion, particularly in America, in the last 2 years or so?
Well, just to be clear, that's not exactly the thesis. It's the idea that the West, with its endless, disastrous, catastrophic wars, including supporting Israel's genocide, of course, that is a Western war, or genocide even, and as well as its economic model, has brought the West into existential crisis. It's the people who used the victory in the Cold War as they saw it to get higher on their own supply and have caused a global catastrophe, not just for the West, but for millions of people across the world. But yeah, I mean, look what's happened with Israel's genocide in terms of Western public opinion, because in the US, it used to be impossible to speak out about Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people. And now, more Americans than not, by a large margin, believe Israel quite correctly has committed genocide, as per the consensus of genocide scholars, including Israeli genocide scholars. They want arms to Israel to be ended. They have more sympathy with the Palestinians now than they do with Israel, which is the first time that's ever happened. Amongst younger Republicans, there's been a massive shift against Israel. But I think what Israel has shown, and I think this is why it's so indicative of the wider fall of the West, if you like, is the West has lost its military supremacy, destroyed in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and now Iran. And it's losing its economic supremacy because of the economic model it had, but it's also lost its moral supremacy. And that moral claim the West had to be the champion of freedom and democracy and human rights was buried in the mass grave of the crime scene of Gaza, along with tens of thousands of Palestinians, including children. And that's the point. The West no longer has moral, economic and military supremacy. And it's frankly partly down, no offense to the guest who, I didn't know who he was, I had to Google him, but that the sort of politics that he has promoted has brought the West to ruin.
All right, Josh Hammer, once he Googled you, he realised that you were part of the problem. Your response?
Well, Piers, I had to Google my interlocutor as well. I never heard of him, and I probably will never hear from him again after the show, and that's probably best just for the both of us. Look, there's so much to respond to. It's hard to know where to begin. Piers, I think the viewers would
just
probably
to be clear, hang on. Before we go any further, just to be clear, neither of you had to Google me, right?
I definitely know who you are, Piers. Don't worry about it.
That's correct.
I've missed you.
So
I wouldn't go that far, but Josh, go on.
I think it would probably be instructive for the viewers of this program, listening to Owen Jones, listening to Trank Uyghur, Dave Smith, just casually throw about the term genocide. They say with such confidence, with such assertiveness, with not even the slightest hint of questioning their word choice, their diction, that there's a genocide in Gaza. Piers, I have here on my desk a rock. The viewers can see this, the listeners can only take my word that I'm holding a rock in my hand. The rock that I'm holding in my hand is from the crematorium at Auschwitz. That is a genocide. A genocide is where all of the mass industrial tools of a nation are oriented towards the singular goal of eliminating from the face of the earth a certain type of people with full deliberation and full intentionality, rounding them up in gas chambers, in mass graves, in all of the various horrific atrocities that the Holocaust entails. We can debate what has happened in Gaza for the past few years. We can debate certain tactics. We can debate whether the IDF has done enough when it comes to calling up individual homes and dropping leaflets. We could talk about the international law of proportionality. We could talk about the Geneva Conventions. We could talk about the fact that it is the most humane civilian to combatant death ratio in the modern history of urban warfare. We could get into all of this. But what we have to get to, at least those of us who are reasonable, and Piers, I know sometimes you struggle for reasonable guests. Certainly my interlocutor apparently does not fit such a description. But what we should strive to is get to a point where we are operating within the Overton window of normal discourse, of non-hyperbolic, of non-catastrophic discourse. This is a war, and lest we forget, lest the viewers forget, it is a war started by Hamas. It was a war started on October 7, 2023. Lest we forget, there was a ceasefire, a full ceasefire in Gaza on October 6, 2023. What happened on October 7th was the equivalent of dozens of 9/11s. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11. I remember it very well. I grew up in the New York area. I remember vividly seeing the smoke from the Twin Towers on that most fateful of days. What happened on October 7th was the functional equivalent on the death toll of dozens of 9/11s on American soil. The median American watching this program should ask him or herself, if this had happened in, let's call it Texas, if you had thousands of Sinaloa cartel commanders who came across the border and just blindly mutilated and raped and butchered. They put babies in ovens. They executed women point blank range on their home. How would the United States respond? How would we respond? These are the kind of questions that have gone so far removed from this debate. And no matter how many fancy words like genocide get perversely and morally incorrectly and legally incorrectly tossed around, I think it's incumbent upon all the reasonable people to ground themselves in the basic facts. And Owen Jones can laugh his sorry ass off who he wants. No one in their right mind really ought to give a crap.
Can I just respond to something you've just? Well, I'll respond if you let me to what you just said there. You just said babies were put in ovens on 7th of October. Why lie like that? You know that's a lie.
I'm not lying.
You know that never happened.
Lying.
You know that never happened. You know not a single baby, one baby,
There's
which was a crime. Let me finish. No.
Of it.
You had a long spiel, and now I'm going to fact correct you because you can't just come on a show like this.
You don't do facts.
I know Piers likes accuracy. I know he likes accuracy in these discussions. No babies were put in an oven on 7th of October. One baby was killed on October 7th, which was bad enough. That's Mila Cohen. She was 8 months old. She was shot through the door of a safe room. That's the baby who was killed on 7th of October. That's a crime in itself. If that's a crime, which I say it is, by the way, how to describe 1,000 babies, 1,000 infants under the age of 1 killed in Gaza by Israel since 7th of October, and over 20,000 children. Now, just to respond to what you just said about genocide, I understand that you're a big fan of Donald Trump. I don't often quote Donald Trump approvingly, let's put it mildly. Last year, he said, and I quote, "A civilization has been wiped out in Gaza." Now, if I were to say, to demand, that a civilization was wiped out in Israel.
He didn't say it. He was threatening Iran prior to the ceasefire in April. He was talking about Iran, not Gaza.
Again,
that's not.
I'm sorry,
you're totally wrong.
I'm sorry to fact correct you again, but he did say, quote, this is a verbatim quote. He said a civilization has been wiped out in Gaza, and he's absolutely right. And nearly every freestanding structure is damaged or destroyed. Almost every hospital has been attacked. Every school's been attacked. Most homes have been destroyed. Well over 100,000 people have been violently killed, according to every reputable study.
Also not true.
A
It's closer
genocide,
to
according to the
50,
Genocide
60,000, 70
Convention,
most.
it means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. And that includes
definition
deliberately
fails.
inflicting
There's no
on the group
intent
conditions
to
of life
obliterate all
calculated
of the
to bring
Arabs
about
of
its
Gaza.
physical
There's
destruction
no intent.
in
It
whole or in
fails on its
part.
own terms.
Now, I would just note
This
quickly,
is so obvious.
Okay, I would just note with you, because you are a supporter of genocide, and I will make that very clear.
I am not.
You said about the Palestinian population of Gaza. You said this is a radicalized population that deserves shame, scorn, and diplomatic rebuke. You weren't talking about Hamas.
They deserve
You
all of
talked
that.
about the Palestinian population of Gaza. That's what you said. You also said large swathes of
radicalized
Gaza should
population
resemble
on
a
planet Earth
parking
according
lot
to every
in
single
October
parliamentary.
2023. You also called for the population transfer of the people, the survivors of Gaza, into other Arab states. You want Palestinians removed from Gaza. You don't want Palestinians to remain in Gaza. That's what you called for. You also called for the military occupation
I think it's a perfectly
or formal
reasonable option. By the way,
re-annexation
Donald Trump
of
also
Gaza.
publicly
That's
flown
what you
in
also
February
said.
2025.
Did you say that?
I never actually personally came out emphatically in favor of that, though. That's simply not true.
Did you say? Did you or did you not? I'm quoting for what you said. Did you not call for the population transfer of the people of Gaza?
No, first of all, I think it's a very reasonable option. By the way, there's a very long history of American presidents going literally back to the Hoover and Coolidge administrations that actually support that. I've actually never explicitly endorsed
You
that
did.
myself.
I've looked it up. You called for the
I have not.
you said
Donald Trump in
population
February
transfer.
2025 in the White House proposed this. By
Yes,
the way,
and you
he
backed
proposed
it.
this. And no, what I said is that
You backed it.
Listen, I don't know whether your IQ is 2 or 3 standard deviations below the mean, but the way the negotiation works.
No, I'm just
is
quoting what you said.
You start. No, but you need to learn a thing or two about negotiation. You start with
Ethnic
a
cleansing.
far out there claim, and then you arrive at a reasonable place of moderation. Donald Trump did this. It was his proposal to float the idea of population transfer.
it's ethnic cleansing. It's called ethnic
apparently
cleansing.
no one had their on their bingo card. No one even
If I
saw
called,
that.
let me just make this clear. If I called for the Jewish population of Israel to be removed from Israel, which I don't support, I oppose. I want the peace and security of all those who live between the river Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. I want all of them to have equal rights. If I called for the population transfer of Jews.
So a couple of things. If he asked me, do I believe in population transfer, I would just say yes. I would, because I know he's trying to get a gotcha moment. I would say yes because that's the reality. I'm not going to hide from that. I know he's going to want to. I gotcha. I knew you were yada yada. I knew you were on apartheid, ethnic cleanser. You start a war with the intention of genociding my people. Then yes, and that's all you want to do. That's your sole mission in life. Yeah, my ideal is that you get the fuck out of there and go somewhere else. Yes.
Israel, you would regard that as genocidal. And do you know what? You'd be absolutely correct. You say, if I said the Jewish population of Israel deserves shame, scorn, and diplomatic rebuke, you would accuse me of being genocidal. You'd be correct. You said many gullible liberal elites pretend the radical jihadists of Hamas do not represent the broader Palestinian Arab population, but that is a lie. You believe in collective guilt and you believe in collective punishment. You said that Gaza should resemble a parking lot. You got your wish, by the way. You got your wish. Tens of thousands of innocent people killed later.
Of Gaza should resemble Park Island. That was literally on October 8th, 2023. This is how wars work.
Wars don't work by wiping an entire territory from the face of the earth.
Look at the photos of Dresden, Germany, circa 1945. This is literally how wars work. Now the West apparently needs a reminder in how wars work. Now you accuse the West of forgetting its moral superiority.
If I called,
okay, let me jump in here. Running a business means you want to be available all the time, because if you do miss that call or that text, your competition will pick it up. Today's show is sponsored by Quo. That's Josh. The whole point of the aftermath of World War II, led by the Geneva Convention, was precisely because of a collective view that some of the incidents, like the carpet bombing of Dresden, like the dropping of nuclear weapons and so on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that this should never happen again. That was why the Geneva Convention got set up. And so to invoke
Piers, among other reasons, like the
II,
Holocaust had a role to play in the Geneva Conventions. Let's be clear here, was not just
That's the Genocide Convention.
Of course. But the point I'm making is to now invoke things that happened in World War II as a justification for what the Israeli government's done in Gaza is to miss the point that
Piers,
the whole Geneva Convention was set up to stop this happening again.
What would you have preferred Israel do in response to the slaughter of the functional equivalent of 3 to 4 dozen 9/11s on their soil, the single largest genocide of Jews in a day since Hitler was alive? What would you have advised them to do? Because from my perspective, they've done a pretty darn good job. Has it been perfect? No. Have there been blunders?
Well, let me give you the nearest.
But
let me answer. I've said this before, and it's not an exact parallel. I accept it. However, we had for many decades the issue with Northern Ireland and the troubles with the UK. And I remember the IRA, a terrorist organization, committing appalling atrocities, deliberately killing civilians without any pretense of going after the enemy, as well as killing people they viewed as the enemy, like the British Army and so on. But they did this for many decades. And at no point did any British government take a view that the way to resolve this and the way to respond was to carpet bomb parts of Belfast, for example. So we had a parallel right on our doorstep involving
no carpet bombing
a border,
in Gaza.
involving a clash between. Well, listen. Here's what I would say about Gaza. And I've said this repeatedly. Because hang on, Josh, I've always defended, as you know, Israel's right to defend itself. I did so passionately after October the 7th. I got hammered by people on the pro-Palestinian side for doing so. But I stand by what I said for many months after the start of the response to October the 7th. But I began quite quickly to say, what is proportionate? What is proportionate here? And actually, ultimately, I concluded that raising 80% of Gaza to the ground, making it uninhabitable, killing 80,000 or so people in Gaza as a response to the appalling killing in a terrorist attack.
A mass percentage of whom are Hamas combatants, lest we forget.
But let me finish my point, Owen, is that actually, to me, it's been completely disproportionate. And as, by the way, that's the view of most of the world,
so
which is why
the international law
Israel reputation
here on this show.
Let me finish my point. I'll finish my point. That is why Israel's reputation has been dragged further down and further down by the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, which contains people that I think are genuine psychopaths like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. So that is my view about it.
Just quickly on Dresden, by the way. Dresden was a terrible crime in its own right, and there were people in Britain at the time who opposed what happened to Dresden. Nonetheless, there is no comparison here. Nazi Germany was a military superpower that had conquered Europe and had slaughtered tens of millions of people and committed an industrialized genocide and was attempting to, quite plausibly at the time, achieve world domination. Gaza is the size of East London. It is a tiny, overpopulated strip of land with a ragtag guerrilla army, and it has been wiped out from the face of the earth deliberately and systematically. And what you just said there, Piers, I think is very important. You said it's been made uninhabitable. Again, I quote, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction whole or in part. That's what genocide does. It makes,
it's not
about,
true.
If Gaza has been made an uninhabitable place.
Destroying a city, destroying a cementicide is not a genocide. Destroying the place they live is not the same as killing them. It is a totally different thing. Is it a horrible situation? Yes. Does it suck to live in a place where everything's destroyed? Absolutely. But it is not nearly the same as killing everybody. And Israel could have done that in seconds, in minutes. That's not their interest. But the world doesn't let them go anywhere. These people are hell-bent on destroying Israel. They have terrorists are not wearing uniform. They're hiding behind civilians. They're building tunnels under civilians. They have no army bases. They're stealing all their aid. What exactly do you expect Israel to do? And the answer is much of the world doesn't care what Israel does because they want Israel to cease to exist. And Israel has to manage this on their own. They have American support, but America also, unfortunately, in many cases, when Israel's at the ninth inning and they have to make very key decisions, America says, "Oh no, don't do that." And so they're left again with both sides inevitably fighting another war in the future.
Support removing the Palestinian population. You supported that. You supported
your
as a
definition
parking lot.
earlier literally said that there is the specific intent. Okay.
Yes.
So in legal terms, we would say the mens rea, the specific mentality to intend to annihilate a certain population from the face of the earth. How is that possible? Where the civilian to combatant death ratio in Gaza is literally 1 to 1.5 is not a lie. It is the most humane civilian to combatant death ratio in the modern history of urban warfare. How do I know that? Because the literal #1 Western world expert in urban warfare, John Spencer, who I believe has been on this show before, he has cranked the numbers on this. And who is going to dispute? Is Owen Jones going to dispute Professor John Spencer really?
If you want to go there, do you really want to go there? Do you really want to go there?
Numbers?
Do you really want to go there?
Saying that there's a subjective intentionality to annihilate a population from the face of the earth with.
You just made you've made a point there about deferring to authority. We'll defer to authority, all right, but we'll defer to authority. Who to listen to? A blowhard like yourself who's looking to get, I looked, about 300 views on your YouTube channel per video, or Professor Omar Bartov, the Israeli-American Dean's Professor of Holocaust Study at Brown University. He said, I'm a genocide scholar, I'm a scholar of the Holocaust, I know a genocide when I see one. What about Amos Goldberg?
Named one very left-wing
no, I've not
Israeli
finished.
natural professor.
I will finish, and then you can respond.
I guess.
Amos Goldberg, Professor of Holocaust History at the Department of Jewish Study and Contemporary Jewry at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Daniel Blattman, again, head of the Institute for Contemporary Jewry at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Raz Sigal, Associate Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies. All of these are Israeli. All of these born in Israel, and all of these dedicate their whole lives to studying genocide and the Holocaust.
They're wrong.
Who
They're
to believe?
Wrong.
Scholars who dedicate their lives to studying genocide.
And by the way,
to studying
you and
the
Piers
Holocaust,
are both wrong on your understanding, your misunderstanding.
Yeah, but hang on. All right, Josh, hang on, Josh. The point surely is this: is that you can say they're wrong. But Owen is right, surely, to point out that a number of Israeli scholars have concluded that what's been happening in Gaza is genocide.
Who cares?
Why would you not care?
Piers, I live in a country, America, that is 50-50 divided on every issue. Why do I care what my very incorrect countrymen happen to say about any given issue, whether it's abortion, guns? Who cares?
No, but
these are debates that happen, and I'm telling you that the people he's appealing to happen to be wrong. But I want to get back to a different point.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Owen kind of got him on this. If you want to appeal to authority, Josh Hammer shouldn't appeal to authority because Owen could bring up these stupid leftist Jews that are gonna shit all over Israel because we have so many of them. So yeah, Owen got him on that. Unfortunately, it wasn't a smart play. We have a lot of left-wing Jews who love to throw their own people under the bus. It's crazy, but they love to do that. This whole concept of international law, rules of war, rules of engagement, genocide, not genocide. It is hilarious to me how the UN put Iran in like a field of women's rights. They allowed them into the camp of women's rights at the UN. The world is just completely confused when it comes to dealing with these issues, because it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and point fingers, but when you're in that position, humans start to have very different reactions. When a mother has her child kidnapped, her feelings and the decisions she's going to make are very different when another woman has her children kidnapped, especially when that other woman is seen as the enemy of that other mother. So human beings just have very interesting psychologies. And until you're in that exact position, it's very hard to make judgments. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make judgments. When I had Miko Pellet on my show, who's an anti-Israel Jew, he said, oh, well, you can't judge Gazans because you're not a Gazan. Of course I can. Anyone can make judgments. I'm not going to fully understand anyone unless I'm in their shoes. That's a universal truth. That doesn't mean I can't make objective points. And my objective point there was, even if you're going through hardship, you have agency to make decisions. You can't just do whatever you damn well please because you were hurt by someone. That applies, that's applicable on an individual level and it's applicable on a group level.
me ask you, can I ask you a quick
you've talked
question?
too much. There is a massive misunderstanding on this panel right now about the law of proportionality, which has been invoked numerous times. Here's what it does not mean. Here's what it means. A lot of people hear this phrase, the law of proportionality, and they say that is not proportionate when, let's say, Israel takes out 50,000 Hamas fighters, or whatever the number is, in response to 12,000 civilians killed. The number is not one-to-one. That's literally not the international law definition. The international law definition is whether or not the military goal, the goal of the operation, is proportionate to the expectation of collateral damage and civilian casualties. That is the actual calculation under international law. That is totally not what the prevailing understanding is. I think the understanding that has been presented here on this discussion today. So, based on that, based on...
Can I... Sorry, you're just speaking at a huge length here. 87% of those killed, according to leaked IDF estimates, are civilians. And what Israel has done systematically... I know you'll just talk over me. I know that's what you're just
I don't know what
Israel systematically does is it classifies people who have been killed as Hamas fighters. Now, there's been detailed investigations by the likes of Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, which finds on an industrial scale, people who are not Hamas fighters, they're not militants, they're not fighters at all, are classified after being killed as Hamas fighters. That's how these bogus calculations which you keep coming up with are invented. Now, on the point there, just about the Holocaust scholars, the genocide scholars, the question you would have to ask yourself, surely, is this. Surely, if people who are Israeli Americans, people who are proud Jewish Israeli Americans and Israelis who dedicate their whole lives to studying the Holocaust and genocide, surely, if they have come to this conclusion, you disagree, but surely these people having this whole body of work behind them, surely there must be a good reason why they have arrived at this conclusion. That is what you struggle to engage with, and that's why with Gaza, almost all of it destroyed.
I'm saying that they are wrong on the
basic buildings,
fact.
over 100,000 people violently killed.
All right, so we are going to wrap this up. It's interesting how when it comes to Jews, the liberal anti-Semites, and I'm not claiming Josh Owens as an anti-Semite, by the way. I don't play that game where I throw the anti-Semite card to everybody. But what I notice is the liberals will quote the conservative anti-Semites, and the conservative anti-Semites will quote the liberal anti-Semites. When it comes to hating on Israel, they'll all team up. But that's also another human psychology feature. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, such a fascinating thing. The more as I get older, the more I realize how I don't justify the actions of my enemies, but I understand them. I don't justify the difference in the ways of thinking that people on my opposition, the things they believe in. But I very much understand. Most of the time, I understand why they think the way they think. With that said, leave your comments. Follow me at Rafi the Realtor for all of your real estate needs in South Florida, and you can support the channel by taking a moment to go to the Buy Me a Coffee link in the pinned comment or description. Any support would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, peace.